Good afternoon. We are very excited about the news on Hong Kong that we all heard in the last days, weeks and months. One of them is obviously that from 2013 on, the Art Basel will take over the Art Hong Kong, and it will be officially called Art Basel Hong Kong. And also some of you might have followed that a couple days ago, Uli Sick announced that a major part of his private collection of Chinese art he collected over the last years will be donated to the future M+ Museum in Hong Kong. And there are lots of happening in Hong Kong. However, what should not underestimated is also that Hong Kong is not only an art hub, but it is also a center of a very exciting and emerging art scene. So we are extremely happy and honored that that Art Basel invited us not only to talk about Hong Kong as an art hub, but also that we can talk today about Hong Kong as a center of artistic creation and a center where local artists do work. I'm very happy that I'm joined here this afternoon by two artists, two represented artists of the Hong Kong art scene who are both born after 1975. One of them is Adrien Wong to my left, and then Morgan Wong next to him. They are joining the panel, as well as Dr. Pili. Before introducing them into detail, please allow me to say a couple of words about myself. My name is Christoph. I'm specialized on Chinese contemporary art. Have been working in China for the last 7 years, and we did publish together with my wife Cordelia a couple books on Chinese art. And one of the incidents why we are also here, because we did just a couple of days ago launch a new book on Hong Kong artists, and I'm especially happy because Adrian is very prominently placed also on the cover of this book with a pink dolphin, which he might talk about later. Adrian was born in 1980 in Chicago. He has actually grown up in the US, and he studied in Yale and Stanford. And since a couple of years, he has been coming back to Hong Kong, getting engaged in the scene, but also using this as a place for your artistic creations. And Morgan was born in 1984. He grew up in Hong Kong, but this does not mean that he stayed the whole time in Hong Kong, but he has been working and studying very internationally. He has been in Beijing and Japan, and now he actually just came into London. And if I may advertise for the Liste Fair, actually his works are on show at Liste right at this moment. And finally, Pili, who you might be familiar with if you're experienced Art Basel goer, because Pili is one of the founding directors of Boers-Li Gallery, who has a booth in the second floor. He holds a PhD from the Central Academy of Fine Art, and he founded in 2005 the Universal Studio Space in Beijing and Zhaojiangdi, which then transferred into Boers-Li Gallery in 2007. And now, luckily or sadly, you will ask you this later in detail again, from July 1st, he will actually leave Beijing and move to Hong Kong, because he will be senior curator of the M+ Museum in Hong Kong. Just some more facts, because I allow them to speak. I wanted to give you information of how many visual artists are working in Hong Kong. However, I think in every country this information is very hard to get, so also we did not find any information. But what I can tell you is that there are 5 universities in Hong Kong where you can be trained and taught to be an artist. There are 17 contemporary art space, and now there are a number of 80 contemporary galleries operating in Hong Kong, quite a few of the international ones you also see here at the fair. Enough of these facts. Adrian, please tell us more about you and your artistic creations.
Sure. I moved to Hong Kong in 2005, shortly after finishing a graduate program, and it was sort of incidental. I had gone originally for a short period of time and started using it as a site for research. My background's in research psychology. My initial degree was in the social sciences, and it really became a place where I could start to investigate a lot of things due to lapses in the cultural preservation of the area, and large parts of the city's history that had gone untapped. The first project I'll talk about is one that I did back in 2007. My family is originally from Hong Kong, though the ties to the city are quite are quite difficult to trace. My mother and father were both estranged from their families. So for the first few years I was there, I spent a lot of time doing genealogical research, and I found a long-lost relative, my paternal grandfather's youngest brother, who was a pretty iconic figure in the early history of Hong Kong television. He was the first person ever broadcast on TV and had a very successful program that aired from 1958 to the mid-70s. And the premise was really simple. He basically threw a birthday party for a child every Saturday afternoon. So there was a call for people whose birthday happened to coincide with the day of the broadcast. The child would be brought in, they'd be interviewed, and he would do his best with a limited budget to create a televised birthday party for these children. And here are a couple shots. I found him, he's now nearing 90 years old, and we became close, and I started talking to him not only about his experiences in Hong Kong as an entertainment figure of Chinese ethnicity on a British broadcasting network, but also about my own family's ties, people that I'd never met, people that I had no connection with as a child growing up. And one of the things that really struck me was the fact that locally produced programming in the mid 20th century was not archived at all. These were all shot live, broadcast into people's homes, and then distributed through the Pearl River Delta. But there was no tape whatsoever. And all of these sets were painted on newspaper, so it's white paint on top of newspaper. They were very quickly put up and then immediately struck. And again, they would do the same thing the following Saturday. So I use this as an excuse to try to recreate some of these early programs from interviews with people who remembered the show from their childhood, from these family photographs and snapshots from magazines and newspapers. And I ended up taking on his role and doubly using that as a way to talk about some of the sort of hidden histories and the idiosyncrasies of my own family's history. So, for example, there was a puppet theater featured prominently in some of the videos that I'd produced. To the right is my grandfather, who I'd never met. He was known for being a very spirited person. He was a producer and a composer for the Shaw Brothers Kung Fu films, so he wrote the soundtracks to many of the iconic Kung Fu movies of the 60s and the 70s. You can't really see it because of the size of the image. He was also known for always carrying a loaded gun with him. Not that he was a violent person. He had special permission from the police to carry this gun, and it was described to me as something he used as a punctuation mark at the end of sentences. So if he got very excited, was very happy about a project or a proposal or something that he had done in the studio, he would pull his gun out and fire shots into the ceiling. Many years later, in 2010, I was doing some film production work, and I went out to a number of these recording studios and these filming facilities, and a lot of the older staff would point to holes in the ceiling and tell me that this was the result of my grandfather's, his antics. To his left is this monkey, and this is a delightful little story that's a little blue. He had a pet monkey. It was his beloved monkey that he carried with him. As I mentioned before, Hong Kong television the local programming was entirely shot live, and so there was no intermediary between the actual shooting and things that would go on. This would be news programs, local production events, soap operas, children's television programs. So he would come onto set during his brother's shows with his pet monkey, and what he had done was he trained his monkey to masturbate upon receiving a hand signal. And he would send the monkey out in front of the cameras on live television, flash his hands behind the camera, and the actors had gotten so used to this that they were trained to step in front of this monkey. And many people still remember watching these programs in the 60s and the 70s. Someone's watching the news and all of a sudden a monkey jumps on the table and starts to pleasure itself. And the cameras would turn, and it became sort of this really interesting anecdote. And it really made me feel a lot closer to a family that I'd never been connected to. Okay, moving on. The mascot for the program was this large pink dolphin, which is the iconic. It's the official animal of Hong Kong, and there's some talk about whether or not pink dolphins do exist in the wild and in their natural habitat, but there was a moment in time where a lot of biologists were wondering whether or not the dolphins in Hong Kong were actually pink species of dolphin or white dolphins that had developed a rash because of the pollutants in Victoria Harbor. So it's sort of this, it became the mascot for a lot of these short video productions and performances I was doing back then. From there, here's another installation shot. From there, I started doing some projects with the Film Development Council, and there was 2009 was the reported 100-year anniversary of the centenary of Hong Kong film. And to commemorate that, I was asked to do some research on the first film ever made in Hong Kong, and that was also another very mysterious undertaking. The film, there's no trace of the film left. It was screened, well, supposedly shot in 1909 by Leung Xiaopo. He completed the film with the help of some funds from overseas. It was screened one time in San Francisco and then was lost on the return trip to Hong Kong. So while doing this research, I was given access to firsthand accounts of, I had his diary, I had sort of notes from people who had supposedly seen clips of the film. And what I became really interested in were all of the other details that came to light while I was doing this research. Not only was Liang Xiaopo a filmmaker, he was also a very active revolutionary. He was a gun runner. He supported many of the military efforts to overthrow the Qing regime in China. And in addition to operating on his own, he worked with a group of other filmmakers who took up a roast meat shop in Kowloon where they would have these revolutionary meetings. And all of the details didn't find an outlet in the conventional research that I was doing. So I started to incorporate that into my sculptural practice. This is a rough recreation of this secret meeting place. The interior shots they include ice cream dishes. Apart from the film and apart from revolutionary plans and schemes in the diary, the third most common topic was the filmmaker's love of ice cream. He was very ardent about the maintenance of local Chinese culture, but his one vice was ice cream. And so these guys would get together, plot to find funds for guns and ammunition, and just be sitting around eating ice cream while this was going on. For this installation, it's narrated by these two ducks that are animatronic. They're fully articulated. One speaks in my voice, and the other one quacks along in Morse code. There were different sections here. The arrangements are all indicative of early 20th century coding mechanisms. The battle map for the siege of Wuhan is embedded into this frieze in the rear of the installation. So at this point, I started to become very interested in looking into different aspects of Hong Kong's culture. I found it to be a very inspiring place in terms of delving into subject matter, and also with my personal tie to the area, certain doors were opened that were not as easily opened in other places that I'd lived. Here is a third project. This is done through the Home Affairs Bureau. I was asked to spend some time investigating and collecting stories from a certain district of Hong Kong, which is now slated for redevelopment. Am I getting close? So I was working with the anthropologist. We were just we're traveling around the western district of Hong Kong collecting stories, trying to find subject matter to put together a theatrical production. So this is a 30-minute play that we had written. The figure in this district that stood out was this woman named Lei Mei, who was a silent film star around the 20s and the 30s. She rose to prominence and was actually courted by the Western film companies and moved to the United States. With the coming of World War II, Chinese faces or Asian faces fell out of favor, and she moved back to Hong Kong and lived out her days in an asylum. Addicted to opium, and it was a very sort of tragic story. People recalled where she used to eat, people that, places that she used to walk. We were shown her apartment complex, and we thought that she would be a great figure to kind of focus on. But as we started writing, it was probably about a month into the writing process, I received a phone call from a professor over at Hong Kong University who was asking about our project. He'd heard that we were interested in Lei Mei, and the wording of his phone call struck me. He said, the character of Lei Mei. And I asked him to clarify. It turns out that this woman was completely fabricated. She was a fictional character used in a series of editorials in the newspaper warning against the excesses of Western influence and the loss of local culture. So all of these people in this district had sort of lost track of where this woman's story came from, and they were pointing and indicating their neighbors as this fictional character. So we continued using the research as if it were firsthand research, and created the storyline of this production about Lei Mei from the perspective of the people in the Western District. It involved a lot of choreography. There were costumes and dance sequences. It was a 30-minute theatrical production that we did in 2010. This past year, I kind of moved more seriously into film, and this is a recent film. It was finished up middle of last year, and this is based off of a former student of mine at the Chinese University, a Korean woman who had moved to Hong Kong to learn Cantonese to communicate with her in-laws. As I got to know her better, I heard more and more of her story. She is a professional scuba trainer, so she runs a scuba academy in southern Thailand with her husband, a man from Hong Kong. And one day she told me the story of how they had met and how they lived their lives together. And it immediately struck a chord with me. They were on a diving trip. He was a stowaway on a tour of Korean scuba divers. They met underwater, fell instantly in love, dove for 45 minutes, came to the surface and realized that they didn't speak the same language. So rather than taking that as a sign that they weren't meant to be together, they decided to spend the next week swimming in the ocean. They separated, got back together, and realized that this was really a deep bond that they had shared. They subsequently got married and lived their lives in silence. So they spend as much time as they can underwater, and above water, they use mild hand signals. They choose not to speak. There are periods of the year where they are unable to dive enough to kind of maintain the magic in their relationship. And this was a great detail that they had sort of shared. During these periods of time, to resolve conflict, they routinely fill the bathtub with water and dunk their heads underneath the surface of the water and just stare into each other's eyes. And so this was the inspiration for a sort of a 3-act, 2-channel film that was completed in 2011. But I think I've talked for too long already. I'll pass it off to Morgan.
Right. Thank you very much, Adrian, for this very inspiring introduction to your work. And what I find extremely interesting is that, as said in the beginning, you grew up, you're born in America, but you still have very much returned to your roots, also as retrieving content for your work and research. Morgan, may I pass over to you?
Yeah. So I'm Morgan Wong. As Christoph mentioned about me, it's like I'm based in London now, which in a few years before I was based across Asia and also Europe, which I found is really inspiring to my works, which is kind of like a materialization of time, become a focus of my own work. And then I'm going to talk about the first body of work, which I did in Sapporo during my artist in residency in there. So it is a still shot of the production. You can see there is a black spot across, in the shade of the trees, which actually is me. I was having the title of the exhibition is 1 hour, which I have a performance of walking backwardly and anti-clockwise under this snowy condition, for an hour, which I'm very interested at that time about how time is being materialized by me, of step by step, second by second, going through the performance. And then it's actually initiated by a project which talking about the time difference between Sapporo and Hong Kong, which having the 1 hour time difference. And then these are some of the the photograph shots. And then from the photograph, it's really nice that you can see the shadow and also the footpath is like changing by my own performance, and then it's kind of like counting the time as well. And then in the exhibition at 2P Contemporary Art Gallery in Hong Kong, I have actually set up the whole show in different medium with like wall text and then photograph, video, and also a slide projection installation, which I find a different medium to express the whole idea of time is really like fascinate me, because like the photograph itself is kind of like a still image, and then it's like a capture of moment, and then and for the wall text is actually taken from a quote from Tennessee Williams, which saying there is a time for departure even when there is no certain place to go. It's kind of like my action of performance, which actually there is no certain departure point, but actually I'm still kind of going through the process, and then to being meditative, and then also being like going through the process of time for myself. And then this is actually the video version of the concept. And then I mean, because like it's a video, so it's the video still can't really bring you a very good idea about how it goes, because like by using the medium of video, I actually transform the performance into another dimension, which I refers the performance actually. So in the video, actually you will see me like walking forward, but then in the performance, actually I'm walking backward, and then you can give a hint by the other skier and also by the snows that actually falling, but then in the video it's actually going upward. Yeah. And then for the slide projection installation, it actually gives you a very momental idea about time, because like of the clicking of the slide projection, it's really like giving you the idea of time as well. So for the second project, I'm going to talk about it's about a rumor of demolition in Beijing, about the rumor of Changdi, and also about 798 as well. And then during the time that I'm based in Beijing, there is actually, I heard of a lot of rumor that Changdi, which originally built by Ai Weiwei, is having a rumor of being demolished, no matter what reason it is. And then being an artist, we feel like very helpless with the situation. And so I'm kind of like making a myth of that to stop the events happening, which I built up a model of the gallery building, and then by building the model of it and demolish it by me as well. So I hope it's kind of like a hoping of the real event won't happen. But then I put the whole video documentation back into installation, and then it's kind of like a more melancholic loop, which kind of like helping the situation going backward and see if it's really looping again and again, like for the rumor to be demolished. And then this is a video of the work, and then you see like the model is actually being demolished, like again at 798. But why to pick the venue of 798? Because like there is a rumor of 798 being demolished like 10 years ago as well. But then luckily it's not happening. And then I don't know if it's because of my myth making, and Chao Changdi is still kind of staying alive in here. Yeah. And then I'm going to talk about this work, which is Metro series, which I done latest in London. And then, as I said, I'm really interested in how artists wasted effort, like the 1 hour performance, and also like the durational demolish of like a model of construction. And then for this work, actually, I have been erasing newspaper image for hours, so to kind of like to stay the memento of like history. And then this is actually a newspaper image I taken from everyday newspaper from London. And then this is actually a newspaper about like Kim Jong-il, the death of him. And then the student is kind of paying tribute to him. And then for this one, it's about London riots. And then for this one, it's about Putin, which it will be shown in Moscow Young Art Biennale. And then for this one, I particularly picked two because two same image to represent in the same method, because like it's about the double presidency of him, like being in Russia. Yeah. So I guess this is.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
What I did like particular was or actually evoked strongest emotion was the work in the middle when you destroyed Cao Zhangdi.
Yeah.
Only the model, luckily, and everyone who has been to Beijing or spent some time here, he knows about the story, and he might be similarly scared about this. And I think, Pili, you having had the gallery very close to this venue, I think it does evoke some emotions for you. So this leading over to you, if you now have seen, not for the first time, but again, these exciting Hong Kong artists, my question to you would be, why have you not decided to come from Beijing to Hong Kong much earlier and did spend so much time in China? Because there's also so exciting things happening in Hong Kong.
Yeah, okay. First of all, my name is Pili, and the next month I will start my job in the M+, the Future Museum of the Visual Culture. And before that, I will a little bit introduce my background. I was the art history background in Beijing in Central Academy of Fine Arts. And then I was involved in the several shows before the 2000 to doing the Young Artist Show and so on. So after 2000, when the political environment be a little bit relaxed, I'm also helping the government, the Ministry of Culture, to do this kind of the Chinese contemporary art show in the Venice, in Centre Pompidou, and so on. So 2005, and then we found it's very hard to work still seriously promote the contemporary art in that kind of the official politically this kind of propaganda situation. So we quit. So we tried to build up our own alternative space. We call the Universal Studios Beijing. And then it's very hard to survive the vintage to commercial gallery. And we call the Boers-Li. And but still in China, to make a commercial gallery is not only about the commercial gallery. It's about because in mainland we don't have infrastructures. We don't have the museums. We don't have the foundations. Even the contemporary art as a knowledge cannot really freely or systematically teach in the university. So if there are no platform, we have to create a platform by ourselves. So that's kind of the very different meaning of the commercial galleries at that time in China, compared with that in Europe. And then since the last year, I decided to accept the job to Hong Kong in the M+. And mainly it's like the M+ is a future museum, which it's already planted for 20 years, 10 years, and now finally luckily, the museum will open in 2017 in Hong Kong. So it's in the Victoria Bay on the West Kowloon side. So we also call the West Kowloon Culture District. And this museum will be supported by the Hong Kong government, and with the 60,000 square meters, the building. And in the 2001, Roman Foster already finished the whole planning for the district. And now now just know that's the Wednesday that the Boers-Li donate most of his collection, like 1,463 pieces to this M+, the museum. So for us, when I decided to accept this job, this will be very interesting. So if you know why this whole collection be loading at the Hong Kong, you must know it's so hard for the museum in Beijing, in Shanghai, or even in Canton to receive this of the collection, because there are so many censorship pieces in this kind of thing. So this become very symbolic. I mean, just there are so many discussions in the last days, like why we don't, the mainlander, as a mainlander, why we don't receive this collection. But in fact, very hard. You receive the collection means you want to take the responsibility. But in this moment, nobody can take the responsibility for such kind of the censorship thing. So this has been loading in Hong Kong. So I will give you more explain about what M plus will be. So M plus is, we call it M plus, that means something more than the museum. So it's not a traditional visual art museum, it's more or less a visual culture museum. So we want to thinking about how a culture or art from a high end can be split into the popular category, or on the other side, how the mass visual, mass culture, subculture, or the popular culture can go back to the high end of the culture. So in future, the whole M plus we will concentrate on Chinese contemporary art, the Asian art, the international art, and also we have the creator for the design and the architecture. We have the creator for the moving image. So in this level, we want to create a kind of the base for the crosswork, and how can we do that? So I think, and also refer to your question, I think for this moment in China, that it's hard to find such good place that you can do this kind of the crosswork. So as the Hong Kong, they have very nice university there. We in China, we call the Hong Kong as a special zone, and one country, two systems. So it's very weird. Last month, June 4th, was in Beijing. Our Weibo or Twitter been blocked because that's the Memorial Day for the Tiananmen Square movement. But in Hong Kong, people really can get on the street to protest. So that's really, you call that China, but it's kind of flying sight. And so that could be really interesting. So I think with this kind of the entire collection, with this kind of the, like also have other institution like AAA, Asia Art Archive, and also the Hong Kong University, Hong Kong Chinese University, they are very good at on the history studies in China. So I think it will be great opportunity to create a kind of a platform on the study, the 20th and the 21st century of the visual culture in China. So that part-wise also is kind of the target for the M plus. So as M plus, we want to explore the 20th and the 21st century visual culture from the Hong Kong perspective. Right. So that's kind of quite interesting, because in Chinese art, contemporary art, we are talking about contemporary art since the 1979, already 33 years. But with the driving by the market, with the driving by the international attention, about now, about the young artists, new artists. But we never seriously thinking about what our contemporary culture related to the tradition, to the past, and how we place the contemporary art in the whole 20th century. And for this, even from this perspective, it's still difficult, because in mainland, the so-called 20th century or so-called traditional culture already partly been ruined, and still you can still find this in Hong Kong, in Taiwan. So I think it could be very interesting place, and we have lots of resources to doing this based on the M plus institution. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think it's very interesting what you're saying, and I think to emphasize also the donation of Uli Sick contains some Hong Kong artists, some of the emerging artists already. Yeah. So for him also there was not this, let's say, eventually artificial split between the mainland artists and the Hong Kong artists. This is something that I found very interesting. And also if you're talking about the size of the museum with the 60,000 square meter, and then on top you're saying you want to show art from a local perspective or work on art, I think this also will give a lot of opportunity also for local artists and for Hong Kong artists to being actually on show in Hong Kong as well. So, Adrian, if I may ask you, when you said you came back to Hong Kong in 2005, was this more than the feeling of Hong Kong now being an art hub, where you would have an opportunity to work with galleries who are now coming, being exhibited at the art fair, or actually also talking to PD about future shows, or is it more like generating your content for your work?
Well, when I first came to Hong Kong, I think the landscape was entirely different. I came at the same time as Tobias Berger, who had taken over the role as director of Parasite Art Space, a large nonprofit in the city. And I think in the time that I've been there, the changes have been astronomical. I mean, with the growth, with the development of the Hong Kong Art Fair, there all of a sudden was a place for, and this is not so much something that I benefited from, but I think the local community was suddenly given the ability to aspire to an art career that was something that could be looked at as more than a hobby. Commercial galleries have grown, and a lot of additional spaces have opened. And I think that through the developments that were sort of set in motion around 2005, I mean, the place has been completely transformed. Yeah. I mean, for myself, Hong Kong serves a very different function. I was living and working in and outside of New York. I'd been living and working in Los Angeles. And so for me, Hong Kong was just a place where I was very excited by the presence of subject matter that I found to be very, very inspirational to my own practice. Yeah.
Whereas it has been very different to you, Morgan, because while Adrian came back to Hong Kong, in a sense, you actually left Hong Kong to go to Beijing, right? So you must have had a different motivation for that.
Yeah, for me, I guess maybe it's like born in Hong Kong and then like getting an idea about Hong Kong and then like, so maybe it's a time to go to see like the global world, like of the art world, and see how it is. And then Beijing is like really the focus of Asia. So I think like Beijing is definitely my place to go. Mm-hmm. So I take my time to go Beijing at 2009 and then until 2010. And then at that time, I feel like really good because like it's really the place to meet people like you and like Pili, like, and also like in the fair now, like a lot of people that I met in here is like actually from Beijing, like I know, yeah. Okay. So I think it's really good to be a chance like to base in Beijing and then to meet new people, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, looking at the time, I would like to offer you the opportunity for one or two questions to the panelists, if there are any.
Just a small question in terms of artistic styles, because mainland China and Hong Kong artists, I would say, are relatively different. They come from completely different environments. For example, the Cultural Revolution, that idea stands differently to mainland Chinese people as opposed to people that were born and raised in Hong Kong. Keeping that in mind, do you think there's a significant difference in terms of the artistic styles or artistic themes between Hong Kong and mainland Chinese artists, contemporary artists of today?
To me, the question?
Well, to any of you, really.
If you first.
Well, Morgan, you have lived in Beijing. You have looked at the Chinese contemporary artists as well.
I think it's more. I don't know if Pili will agree with me or not. Like, but I think like for the previous generation of Chinese contemporary artists, they are really like having a lot of like signal or like a lot of significant influence by the Chinese contemporary history, and then. But because of like a mobility of like people, and then like people from the overseas are going into Beijing, and then a lot of artists is moving out to study like me in London, like in elsewhere, and then they come back to Beijing, and then they're actually like articulating a lot of like Western art language. So I think the kind of artistic style is kind of like blending into a Chinese and also a Western style. So yeah.
Based on my very personal view, that actually it's a very interesting question, and I think since the 1990s, the Chinese art have been introduced to the international art sense. Always two model. One model is like Western impact Chinese culture, then Chinese culture start to react. So along this logic, you will see very political Chinese contemporary art, even like Ai Weiwei for today. Another model is like whole Chinese contemporary art is the result of the traditional China transformed to a modern China. So along this logic, you will see very exotic Chinese contemporary art. So that's always, if you see what's happening in the last 20 years, that's always the way they try to explain the Chinese contemporary art. So along this logic, it's very hard for the outsider to put the Hong Kong artists into these two logics because it is too special. And also think about how the international art world receive we call the mainland Chinese contemporary art is because Chinese art political systems very different from the West. So under this level, they might think the Hong Kong environment is too normal, it's too westernized, it's not Chinese enough, and so on. So that's exactly happened after the 1993 until the 1997.
But I have to say, like in terms of content, I don't think it's too westernized. I think one of the issues in terms of content, and just also looking at this from an outside perspective, I feel like Hong Kong's a place that's been historically very stable. Mm-hmm. It's had a very good economy, quality of life indices have been relatively high, and so when you look at the sort of the investment in political work, it's a very different kind of investment. So yes, Hong Kong's more westernized and it's more normal, but it's also much more comfortable. And I think that there's a different kind of work that comes from that sort of environment. If I were to try to describe it in some adjectives, I personally find that a lot of the most accomplished Hong Kong art tends to be much more introspective and much less overtly political, kind of dealing with structures in the world. Instead, it's work that deals with personal experience of what it is to live in the city and domestic spaces and things like that.
But what I'm talking about is in the last 20 years, you really see this kind of unfair situation for the Hong Kongese artists, because for the Western creators, they think, okay, they are not Chinese artists. They're educated in the States, in London. But for the Chinese artists, we think, why we want to show in the Hong Kong artists. But things changed quite a lot after 1997, even in Hong Kong, because the mainlander issue, the central government and Hong Kong, you can see very strong nervous or very strong this kind of conscious about the identity problem. So there was before 1997 and after 1997, this issue become not small, become more and more strong for most, even recent the conflict between the mainland and Hong Kong. So, and also I see a lot of the Hong Kongese artists, not only in Hong Kong, but internationally, like Andrew, they always started from with the family the history, try to identity or located themselves. So now I think it's really a new era to invoke this kind of individual studies for the Hong Kong artists, and I hope that Plus in future can do some work on this direction.
Really, thank you very much for this great end, and I want to thank you, Pili, for being here. Morgan, Adrian, thanks for joining us. Please allow me a final note. Come to Art Basel Hong Kong next year. I think it's opening on May 23rd, but also there is not only the fair, but what we're trying to show you today is that also during the year there are great artists, there is great art to be seen. So if you decide to come, you're very welcome. And thanks for coming this afternoon.
Okay.